Welcome in to the Paul Kuharsky podcast. I'm Paul Kuharsky of paulkuharsky.com. I think most of you know that. This is part of the 440 Sports Network brought to you by Zen Sports. Happy to be with you on a Friday talking some Titans during the deadest of dead periods, late June and July. Glorious time to be covering a team that has nothing going on and who has virtually everyone on vacation. I haven't checked in over there. Did send a text to get something confirmed this week. That came back quickly. But there is still a lot to talk about and a lot to review. And I imagine a lot of you have questions. Please go ahead. And if you're watching this live on YouTube, on Twitter, and where else? On Facebook, call others' attention to it, particularly on Twitter. Go ahead and throw up a retweet as usual. I'll hit on a couple topics here, and then we'll dive right in to your questions, which are the meat of these as we structure them right now. Good to see you guys flowing in here as always. So I talked about this a little bit on a rare afternoon appearance with Rex Road yesterday on the game, but I think it's something that we've generally underestimated or not hit hard enough locally. It's been hit a lot nationally. Are our expectations for the Titans for Will Levis too high? And I think they are. Look, every year, I fall into it, and certainly Nashville media fall into it, fan base falls into it, and around the league it happens. We get too excited about hopeful season. It's hopeful season for everybody. There are no games to be lost. There are no big mistakes to be made by players. There's no real review of play calling, of play, of snap distribution, of lineup, of all of these things for us to evaluate. And virtually everything that comes out outside of an injury is positive. It's a beautiful wrinkle for the NFL in their offseason calendar, right? Free agency, generally, if your team signs players, you feel good about that. The draft, it's virtually impossible to feel bad about your team adding players, even if they are not the players that you ultimately wanted. Everybody's getting healthy, generally. If your team has new coaches or adjustment to the coaching staff or new GM or new hires, everybody's excited about that. Look, Will Levis had two great games last year. That debut with the 4 touchdowns against Atlanta, the incredible comeback on Monday night in Miami, unprecedented the way they came back. Fantastic performances. But there were 6 others that were not nearly as good. And they've built this team up, still not as good as it needs to be. There was too much for them to address in one offseason. They've gotten in better protection and better weapons for sure. The things that you want a quarterback to have around him in order to maximize his chances at success. They've talked about the accuracy and the decision-making and how he's set up to be better at those things. But we still don't know, and we're not going to know for some time. But I think the number of people who think, this is my perception based on the feedback that I've gotten from fans, the percentage of people that think he could take off and be a star is much higher than the number of people who think he could go down a bad path and be a bust or bad. And I don't know that that's the right measure. I think the right place to be is in the middle of those two, with a lot of not knowing and not having a sense of it. I looked at, second round quarterbacks don't pan out. The last 4 who were any good, Brett Favre's all the way back in 1991. Drew Brees in 2001. He was available because he was short. But people now, if they like quarterbacks, go get them in the first round. They don't leave them for the second round. Andy Dalton was a second rounder in 2011. Derek Carr was a second rounder in 2014. Would you be happy with Levis if he was Derek Carr? I would not. Would you? Is that enough for you? And then I looked at Levis versus Locker. Locker in his first 8 starts, I tossed one out where he only threw 2 attempts before he was hurt. Had a 57.6 completion percentage. Now, we knew Locker had really big accuracy issues coming into the league, bigger than Levis. Levis was only 59%, so slightly better. Locker threw for a few more yards, almost 100 more yards. He threw 9 touchdowns to Levis's 8, 9 interceptions to Levis's 4. Levis's passer rating was 9 points better. Levis took 27 sacks, Locker only 16. I think there's more reasons to be optimistic about Levis than there was for Locker. Locker was a bad pick. Locker was a reactive pick. Locker had traits, personality traits, really, that were solutions to the bad personality traits of Vince Young. But, I wrote at the end of minicamp that, there was no huge jump from Will Levis into his first most real practices under Callahan. Still a work in progress. You would expect that. What's he doing in camp? All of that. It's still a lot of mystery, right? I think we have to be aware of that. Paul Bunyan in here is saying he just wants to see him be efficient. I think that's fair. But people who are touting him as a potential star at this stage are being very optimistic. The framework for success for him is set up, but it doesn't mean he can be a success. The whole league passed on him, including the Titans in the first round. I don't think it's a huge thing that the Titans passed on him at 11, thinking that they could get him early in the second round. They're judging how he's valued by the league, but how he's valued by the league was not as good as Bryce Young, not as good as CJ Stroud, not as good as Richardson. And there were some other teams that needed quarterbacks there who went different directions. So just, I think we need to tap the brakes. If you're super enthusiastic about him, there's room for disappointment there. I would tap the brakes. The one other topic here I wanted to touch on, the growth of the Titans analytics department. They hired 2 football analysts this week, Aaron Salji and Alex Rogers. I may be butchering Aaron's last name, P-S-A-J-D-L. That's a lot of consonants. And hopefully we'll get to know that name. What I want to know, what I hope I'm able to write, is how these people fit in. And they're obviously front office hires. I would think that Callahan, got to know them in the interview process. I still say upstairs, downstairs. The Titans, Rand Carthon's office is now across a hall from Brian Callahan. It's not the building, the new building. They're in the new building. The old building was structured such that Floyd Reese's office, John Robinson's office was upstairs and Mike Vrabel's office was downstairs. So you still talk about upstairs, downstairs in terms of the, not the power, but the who's where, right? The division. So are these upstairs people, they're trying to be a much more collaborative operation. So how much is the football analysis about drafting, finding players, figuring out injuries and all of that? And how much is the football analysis about when do you go for it on 4th down? When is a third down play? Do you know that it's a 2-down situation here? Use of timeouts, all of that stuff. Some of which Mike Vrabel was very good at. Now, his analytics guy was Stretch, his right-hand man, John Stryker, but they were not working hand in hand with the quote-unquote upstairs analysis people, of whom there were not many. So I wanted to look now, Titans front office continues to grow and grow. So football strategy, the department, and some of these departments don't, just fit everyone neatly. So Vin Marino, who's vice president of football administration, whose number one thing is salary cap, fits in football strategy. Well, the salary cap is a piece of football strategy, but it's not the kind of strategy we're talking about. Anthony Pastrana, who's been around forever, is the chief video guy. Well, is video guy strategy? In some regard, it is. Is he helping decide fourth down stuff, draft stuff, free agent stuff, injury stuff? No, he's not. Now, Sarah Bailey is the director of football research and development. She was a big Chad Brinker hire. She's the head outside of Brinker of research and development. Now, Bryce Wasserman, who is very tight with Amy Adams Strunk, dates her daughter, is chief of staff football strategy. Then you've got an assistant director of football strategy, a lead developer of football technology, an assistant developer of analytical football research, who was John Robinson's first hire, a video assistant who doesn't really fit in there. And now these two new hires, football analysts. So are they going to be the kind of guys you see during the Ravens broadcast who were, MIT guys who are talking to Harbaugh in his ear about game day decisions? I don't know. And I hope the Titans will be somewhat candid about that, because I'm very curious about that, as I imagine you are. Stuff that we will hopefully find out when we have a chance, when I have a chance to talk to Brinker, really would be the guy, but maybe Rand. But the guy will have the most access to ask about these hires and these people will be Brian Callahan. So we'll see what we find out, but the Titans are a much more modern football team now. So we will see. A pause here as we get into questions to encourage you to retweet so that more people will join us and more questions will be asked. And we're not going to go an hour today. There's less going on. And it's not that time of year. So, but hit that retweet button and let's get this thing going. Appreciate it. As always, a quick word right off the gate about my fantastic sponsor, Zen Sports. Zen Sports is the place to be doing your betting, Tennessee specific. So it's got a local flavor to it. You can go there. You can use the code TNPaul. And if you use TNPaul and you bet as little as $10, get a free year membership to paulkuharsky.com. It's a good deal. You can bet college baseball right now. See how you feel about UT in the College World Series coming up. Exciting time. You can bet Euros. Big games going on. I actually yesterday taped the England game. England against Denmark. Did not hear a thing about it all day, which is very hard for me to do, and then watched it that evening as the Danes outplayed England but wound up with a 1-1 draw. Go there, bet anything you like, and you can bet big early because you've got a guarantee that if you lose that first bet within 24 hours, you get that money back. So you go there, you make a big bet. Use my code, of course, TNPaul. But you go there, you make a big bet. If you win, you're bankrolled. If you lose, you get that money back. So it's a great way to start an account at a new place. I urge you to check them out. They're very good to me. I hope you'll be very good to them. All right, let's move on to some questions. Also, remind me, I wanted to talk to you about my podcast last week, and hopefully I will remember that. Jeremy asks, why do I think Anthony Richardson seems to get more hype than Levis? Have people really seen enough to rank the Titans at the bottom of the league? Well, people have seen what they've seen. Off-season rankings are off-season rankings. Anthony Richardson was the fourth overall pick, and he only played 3 games plus last year. So there's still a lot of enthusiasm and curiosity. If you were high on Anthony Richardson in the draft last year, and if you were high on, that microphone's in a lousy position. If you were high on Anthony Richardson in the draft last year and you were high on him heading into the season for the Colts, I don't think that goes away when he gets hurt and misses, 13 games. So you pick up where you left off with Anthony Richardson. I don't think that's unreasonable. I personally wasn't high on Anthony Richardson coming out. I wasn't high on Will Levis either, but I give him a clean slate, and I'm watching him up close. And so I think he's got more potential than I imagined, and now he's in a better coaching situation. So and on a team with better wide receivers and better protection. So we'll see. And I think, obviously we're going to see about Richardson if he can stay healthy. But I don't begrudge people who were high on Richardson a year ago being high on him now to see what happens. Five years from now, how many of the AFC South quarterbacks will be the same? Not as many as we think, Ed. If you had to guess, I'd say 2 of the 4. I like Trevor Lawrence. So I would tend to say Trevor Lawrence will be. And C.J. Stroud had a remarkable rookie year. So, does he fall off or does he build? We've seen some guys fall off. Jalen Hurts, who was very good and fell off. So some of these guys do that and get kind of figured out or aren't as good as they appear, or the coaching crumbles or the team crumbles. But it's hard to say. If I'm using that equation that 50% of them should work out, then I'm dismissing Levis and Richardson, and I'm not ready to dismiss either of them. So it's a tough call, tough prediction to make at this stage. Amar, thank you for the kind words. He says, I'm the man. I agree with that. Of course, Jeremy says his big concern is the ability for the wide receivers to separate. If they cannot, I think the whole team is doomed. It's been a problem for a long time with this team. I absolutely agree with that. The Titans' lack of speed at receiver has been the key to the Titans' long-standing problem at receiver. Here's the guy that's got to be the difference. Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley has the sort of speed, the sort of suddenness that the Titans have lacked for far too long. Now they're dependent on one guy, right? Hopkins can get open and can make catches in tight windows without blazing speed. So he's that guy. Tyler Boyd is an underneath guy who has success, particularly against zone, and can get open. But yes, separation is an issue. They're not going to win with separation with receiver 2 and 3. They're going to win with route precision and accurate throws. Levis and Hopkins showed that they had that connection last year. Barring some dramatic fall off from Hopkins, I feel pretty good about that connection. We'll see about Boyd. And they've got Jaquan Jackson now who can contend for some time there. If he pans out, they've got Kyle Phillips, who's always superb at that stuff and is an underneath guy. If he can stay healthy and make a bid to make the team, of which I have serious doubts, but he can get some separation when he's right. I'm not real confident in him getting right. Burks, if he has time to get up to speed, can get some separation. I'm not buying Burks as being as great as everybody's saying, obviously. But yeah, this is not Miami with receivers who are going to run away from people. And some of those underneath routes, particularly in the middle of the field, are not Levis's best thing. So how much better does he get at that? Margot is very enthusiastic about this team. She says a new era in Titans football has begun. I think the Titans are going to do much better this season. I can't wait. What is much better than 6 wins? Is 9 wins much better? I think that a 3-win increase would be much better. 9 wins would certainly have them in some level of playoff position, right? 9 wins, you're definitely in the conversation for the 7th playoff spot. And the 7th playoff spot has proven so far to be to show us that it should be a six playoff team field, right? The 7th team has been pretty bad so far since the playoff expansion. Fatty Matty is commenting here that he really wants me hired at the game. I would love to join up over there, so you guys keep letting them know you want me. Any word on the safety market? Ivan Gregory says, I haven't heard anything since May signed with the Dolphins. You would think that would spark a little action, but don't know. Justin Simmons, Condre Diggs, still out there. Adam wants to know who ends the year with more carries among, assuming good health, Sharp or Pollard. Well, the one thing, they are definitely not measuring it based on carries. They're measuring it based on touches. So you got to factor catches in there for Tajay Sharp and for Tony Pollard. So I wouldn't measure it on carries. I would measure it on touches. And I think they'd like it to be close to 50-50. I have no substance on which to base a prediction at this point in time. Trey says, thank you for elsewhere. Many of you in here who remembered my old second podcast, or it was my first podcast in a lot of ways, when I was at the Zone, before I was doing a podcast here. I might have been doing it when I was still at ESPN, but my kind of personal essay podcast that wasn't football related, I resurrected last week. I did it the week before when I was on vacation and left it in the bank. I appreciate all the kind feedback I got on it. I was pretty pleased. And my intention at this time is to try to do them when I have something to say. So it won't be a regular schedule, but I'll be on the lookout for something that strikes me or is on my mind, and I'll keep a running list. And when I feel I have something I can build into a 20-minute essay, I will. So I really appreciate that. I know Trey's been a fan of that, amongst others who were calling on me to do it again. Glory Holtz. Titans recently signed Garon Christian, who started 10 games for Bill last year in Cleveland. Do I know which tackle spot they're going to use him at? No history at right. I don't know what tackle spot they're going to use him at. They don't have a clear-cut backup left tackle. The backup left tackle right now would be the loser of the right tackle job, which is technically 4 deep, though Leroy Watson is really very much the 4th. And I don't know that the competition's really not going to run 4 deep. Am I right in saying it's 4 deep? You got Petit Frere, Duncan. Who am I counting third? OJ. And so I think Watson's very much 4th. So he could be the second left tackle, or Christian could be the second left tackle. But some of these guys are getting cut. I mean, right there, we're talking Latham, Petit Frere, Duncan, Christian, OJ, and Leroy. That's 6. They're not carrying 6 tackles. So several of those guys are not making it. I did have Jennifer asks, any indication if this coaching staff will hold out the team's key starters in the preseason? Too early to discuss? Question mark. Does Willis, not a fan, take a majority of the snaps? I think that Jim Wyatt and I talked with Callahan about this as early as the owners' meetings, and that his general response was that he finds value in preseason work. So, and I can't see how they wouldn't find value in Levis getting some preseason work. Now, how much, I don't know, but the idea that he's not going to play at all in the preseason, I don't see that happening. They've got too much that they need to be, they've got too much they need to accomplish. Ivan says his biggest concern is Levis's health. If he goes down early, we have another year of trying to figure out if we have the right guy. Yes, certainly. And sacks are a quarterback stat to a degree, and staying healthy is a quarterback skill to a degree. I've had that conversation with Peyton Manning. I've heard Tom Brady talk about it. That's one of the things he needs to learn as well. Had a couple last year. I'm not saying they're avoidable, but I'm saying in general, injury avoidance is something a quarterback can be a part of, a big part of. And so hopefully, he stays healthy. Mason Rudolph is a better backup than I gave him credit for when he was signed, but needs to, we don't want to see him. You don't want to see him. And certainly the long-term injury that you're talking about would set back the program for a long time, would set back the evaluation of Levis, which we don't want to see. Steve says the Titans don't add to defense. Will the defense stop anyone? The Titans added L'Jarius Sneed, arguably the best cornerback in the league. Chidobe Awuzie, a cornerback that's better than anybody they had at cornerback on the outside last year. So I don't see how you don't see additions there. They're way better at cornerback than they were last year. Their depth should be better with Brownlee as the third outside guy. So McCreary is the only guy who's back, who was arguably their best corner last year, their nickel. So their inside linebackers should be new. I'm not real high on Kenneth Murray, but we have to see how they deploy him. Cedric Gray ideally would be the other starter if he has a good camp. There's two new starting inside linebackers. Tavondre Sweat was their second draft pick, who would start next to Jeffrey Simmons if he's healthy. Sweat, Murray, Gray, Sneed, Awuzie. That's 5 of your starting 11 who are new. But Steve says the Titans, if the Titans don't add to the defense, will the defense have already added 5/11 of the defense is new. Will the defense stop anyone? I would expect the defense to stop people. A little concerned that the defensive line and the edge rush is not satisfactory, but post OTAs, and the last OTAs were after minicamp, nobody's going to be honest about Willis. Also, the building immediately empties out. But they're saying nice things about Willis, and they're trying to make it like it's a competition between Willis and Rudolph. I think it would take an act of God for Willis to be ahead of Rudolph. Burks has shown some things in practice, Paul Bunyan, to warrant, good reviews for an offseason, but not to warrant mentions with T.O. and whoever else, who was that? Calvin Ridley was mentioning him with? That was crazy. Jeremy, back to the separation issue, says that lack of separation certainly won't help Levis and those completion numbers. I like the direction they're going in the passing game structure, but there's still work to do for sure. I don't think anybody should argue with that. Who, in my opinion, Glory Day Sports says, is the better player at their respected, I'll change that to respective position, Sneed or Simmons? Well, if you're comparing them to their colleagues, Simmons is not as good as the top interior defensive players around the league. Dexter Lawrence, you look at, or Chris Jones, those guys. I mean, people hate to hear it, and it's considered sacrilege around the Titans to say that Jeffrey Simmons is not the caliber of those guys, but he has not been the last 2 years the caliber of those guys. And L'Jarius Sneed's coming off a season where he was regarded as the best cornerback in the league, or one of the best 3 cornerbacks in the league. So I would say that Sneed is regarded as a better cornerback than Simmons is as a defensive tackle right now by the league, and I would agree with that. Ed Harris on Elsewhere, he said it was great. He's the same age, and it resonated with him. His humble opinion, that pod should be a quarterly thing, so it's not rushed, but very thoughtful like that one was. Thanks, Ed. Mr. French is asking if I've enjoyed watching the Tennessee baseball. Do I think they'll win the championship? I do think they'll win the championship, but I have not watched them much. I hope to watch them this weekend, but I will be watching some Nashville Select baseball. A fine 14-year-old travel team is my priority. And the member of my household who is on Select just made Ravenwood's baseball program after tryouts on Monday and Tuesday. So I was excited to see that tweet from Ravenwood Baseball. 8 guys from the class of 2028 made the team, including my son. So he's put in a lot of hard work. I'm really excited to see where he goes from here. And I am a big Ravenwood baseball fan. This is a good question here, Glory Days. With the departure of Henry, Lewan, Jones, Byard in recent years, who will emerge as the vocal leaders in this locker room? I think Awuzie is going to be a big guy in that front. I think Levis, by the very nature of the position, will be one. But I think there is room for leadership to emerge and grow. And that's an interesting story to watch. And that'll be an interesting storyline during camp. Robert Pruitt, what do I see as the biggest position change for the Titans from past years to this one? Running back, given Henry and Vrabel departure? I mean, I certainly think that's the most dramatic change. Henry's been the face of the franchise for the bulk of his 8 years with the team. And so for fans looking out there, that's the guy you're going to miss. Now, I will say this, and there's been a ton of turnover, but no matter who's left, I said this about McNair, said it about George, said it about Jarrell Casey, said it about, Delaney Walker, all the great Titans who were foundational pieces of this franchise. Nobody ever gets in the huddle and looks around and thinks about who isn't in the huddle. Just not the way it works. You're going forward with the guys you're playing with. Nobody thinks that way. Robert Draper, I'm happy to see you. That article you sent me, I have not finished, but man, it is really good. I could see how a book is coming out of that. Callahan seems very excited about Spears and Pollard for their varied skill set. But what expectations do I have for the run game with them? Well, they're not going to be trucking people the way Derrick Henry in his prime was. I think the one question, because they're not Derrick Henry and nobody matches Henry's physicality, you have a little bit of a question about what they can do between the tackles. Spears, you haven't really seen do it a lot. Pollard's coming off an injury year, but I think they should be fine. I think Bill Callahan, is equipped to get that line into run blocking shape. And I would expect the run game to be, solid enough to be effective. But it's a good question, and it's among the many things that we're going to be monitoring. And certainly they're going with a hot hand, and they're going to use the short passing game to those running backs as a piece of the running game. And so, I don't think we're going to see many 30 carry or 28 carry or maybe even 25 carry games, because some of those carries are going to go to short throws to get those guys in space that all seem like a run. They're going to help Levis get the completion percentage up, and they're going to help Pollard and Spears get out into space quicker with the ball. So that's a good thing for us to have an eye on. Yeah, Marcus says, casual football fan question, how does the offense practice trick plays against the defense? Won't the defense have an idea what's coming? Well, not the first time. So the first time, you wonder about you gauge how tricky it was, how much of a trick it was, how much of a surprise it was. After that, the defense might be reacting to it in a way where it recognizes what's coming, but you still monitor your own execution and the like. And then when you're running it during a practice week against a scout team, the scout team doesn't know what's coming the first time, so they're surprised. And then you might instruct the scout team. The scout teams are reading the defense off the card. So the scout team is doing what the Titans expect the Bears to do on this play. All right, show us this Bears set, which is going to signal us we think we can have success with this trick play. And so they're only reacting to it as it happens, but they're reacting to it out of this set. And out of this set, the Titans think, well, if we do a flea flicker, this linebacker is going to be drawn in, and the safety's going to lean that way, and this guy's going to end up open because they're going to bite. Well, put the scout team in that set and see if those things in fact happen from that set. It's kind of how it works. Ed says, when it comes to cuts and all things being equal, does a guy Rand drafted have an advantage over a holdover guy? I don't know that they'll put that much weight into that. I don't know that there are many ties. In a tie, then, contract, health, history, those kind of things would come into play. But Rand doesn't strike me as a guy who's going to worry about his draft record. And particularly, maybe this year's pick would probably have an advantage. Last year's pick is largely a Vrabel guy. Glory Day has a good question about who, in my opinion, will be the most improved player on the roster compared to last season. I don't have a good answer off the top of my head. Nick is enjoying the pod from Siesta Key today. Appreciate you listening down there. No word on Simmons, Justin Simmons, a question that is coming in. We'll take another round of questions if you have any more. The Titans were reported. We've got a question here from Brian Spivey. Are the Titans looking at any UFL players for training camp fillers? I think the report was out that they looked at, they were one of two teams talking to, I think, the UFL's Defensive Player of the Year. So, that guy could be conceivably more than a training camp filler. I don't know. I didn't pay any attention to the UFL. Did you? Did you see anybody that you loved there? I'm not really interested in the spring football. In the two incarnations before, in the current incarnation, it's just not something that catches my eye. I like, the best level of competition at stuff, and that certainly does not qualify. So I know there are some people that are like, I'll watch any kind of football at any time. I am not one of those people. I want to watch good football. I want to watch good soccer. I want to watch good baseball. I want to watch good, whatever. When the Olympics come around, I'll probably watch some of it because it's the best. I'm not that interested in the U.S. swimming trials or track trials, though, it can be compelling TV. But when the best U.S. people go and compete against the best people in the world, that usually makes for compelling TV, particularly if it's well scheduled on my evenings. It would be better if those Olympics were going on, starting in 2 weeks and for the month that follows. A couple new comments here. Let's see what you've got. Beach was excellent. I appreciate you asking. And, it turned into some double red flags down there not too long after we left. So that was great. Chris Flint asks, any potential for a John Robinson interview? I know Malarkey came out after a while. John Robinson I haven't talked to him in a while, but he has no interest in talking. Rex Road was trying to get him just very narrowly on the decision to draft Derrick Henry for a very good piece about how Derrick Henry came to be a Titan. That was, an athletic story that ran before Derrick Henry's last game as a Titan. And I know Robinson was unwilling to do even that. I don't think he's been quoted once since he was fired. So I don't have big expectations. I joked with him about authoring his book down the road, and I think he giggled at that. All right. It looks like we're coming to a reasonable end, and I think that's been a good 40 minutes. So I appreciate you. If you're listening to this on Apple, on Spotify, on iHeart, I appreciate your presence there. Please rate, subscribe, review. All of those great things are very helpful to me. Same thing on YouTube in particular. Appreciate your presence there. Stay tuned for me next week on Wednesday. I'll be on Robbie and Rex Road on 102.5 The Game Wednesday morning, 8 to 9, and all the usual stuff. So stay plugged in to paulkuharsky.com. I appreciate you very much. Don't block the box, and please be sure not to don't block the box. Do lock your locks. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks so much for coming in. I appreciate the chance to talk.